right, this meeting is being recorded.
There you go.
And Zoo is making some weird thing at me. Okay, this is fun. Thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully more people join us shortly. But if you don't know me, I think many of you do. My name is Dr. Crystal Heath, and I'm a veterinarian in Berkeley, California. And I'm joined by Linda Cridge in Indiana, right? What city in Indiana?
Yes. Right outside Indianapolis. It's called Fishers.
Oh, nice. And you're currently facing criminal charges. What are your charges?
My charges are, I just wrote them down. Well, yeah.
That's okay.
No, third-degree burglary and
Okay.
wiretapping and eavesdropping, which is a serious misdemeanor. One of them is a felony and the other is a serious misdemeanor.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about why you're facing charges and why you decided to do this. But first, I'm going to give a little presentation to people who might not be aware of this whole thing and what's exactly going on. So a lot of who's invited to this meeting, basically. It is activists, pre-veterinary students, and veterinarians. My goal is to get the veterinary community more involved in these issues and talking about them. And also just kind of part of this conversation, because I think it's important for the animal rights community and the veterinary community to be talking to each other. I think we can both be of benefit to each other. So a lot of this information is geared towards veterinarians. So veterinarians learn about the concept of One Health, and that's the idea that human, plant, animal, and environmental health are all interconnected. Our veterinary I am going, Pete Buttigieg for president is entering the waiting room.
Oh,
okay.
That's my sister. That's my sister.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, yes. Just for the first time, actually, there's some weird like doorbell thing. Can you guys hear that whenever anybody enters a room? I've never experienced that before, but
that's so funny, Susan. Yeah, that's my sister.
So basically, we learn about the concept of One Health and the idea that human, plant, animal, environmental health are all interconnected. And our veterinary institutions like the American Veterinary Medical Association and local veterinary medical associations have a great deal of influence over our food system, especially as it relates to animal agriculture. We have also like this really big microphone as veterinarians and the power to influence our political systems and our laws and our regulatory bodies. And we all want a food system that's just and safe and equitable and doesn't hurt humans, the environment, or animals. But COVID-19 really highlighted just how precarious and unjust our food system was and is. And unfortunately, the veterinary profession has also failed to advance the goals of One Health and instead has lended legitimacy to an exploitative and really oppressive industry where corporate profits supersede justice and compassion. And how did this all happen? What and who is standing in the way of these goals we all want to achieve? In short, it's corporations and industry who are wielding unjust influence over our regulatory systems. And as, oops, let me just see here. So I'm going back to the meat industry's influence over government. Trump used the Defense Production Act, which was a Korean War era act to compel meat companies to go to work despite worsening outbreaks. And emails showed that it was actually the meat packing industry that drafted this executive order to keep the plants open. In May of 2020, Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts also refused to allow a JBS meatpacking plant to close despite health officials' pleas to close it and allow them to create solid screening process. Teresa Anderson, who is a regional health director, drafted a letter to Ricketts, but he would not allow the plant to close. Then Nebraska became one of the fastest growing hotspots for COVID-19. And this story, this is a great article you should all read. It highlights the racial injustice that exists in our food system. It goes into detail about the outbreak at this particular plant, this Tyson plant in Waterloo, Iowa. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds resisted virus restrictions and blocked officials from shutting their businesses. At the meatpacking plant in Waterloo, plant supervisors falsely denied the existence of any confirmed cases or positive tests for COVID-19 within the plant and allegedly told workers that they had a responsibility to keep working to ensure Americans didn't go hungry as a result of the shutdown. And Tyson paid out $500 thank you bonuses to employees who turned up for every scheduled shift for 3 months. And this incentivized sick workers to continue reporting for work. And the Tyson managers also bet money on how many workers would get sick. And this plant processed 19,500 hogs a day and employed 2,800 workers. 1,000 ended up infected with COVID-19, and these workers were immigrants and refugees from the Congo and Myanmar, and many were not in a position of power to advocate for their own safety and protection. So, oops, my thing isn't clicking. Okay, there you go. And as a result of the lack of capacity at these plants, this resulted in a lot of really deleterious effects. The most affected populations were Black, Indigenous people of color, placed in exploitative working environments. And they also are people who have poor health outcomes due to the racial injustices that exist in our medical field. And they endured inadequate protections in their workplace. So trigger warning, the next few slides, there are some dead animals. So turn away if you don't want to see that. As a result of the lack of capacity at these plants and closed plants, animals who were reaching slaughter weight had nowhere to be killed and processed in the usual way. Hogs would soon grow too large for regular slaughter plants to handle. And meanwhile, weaned pigs were becoming ready to make their way through the system. And industry analysis says pork and beef processing had fallen 25% because of these outbreaks. And Iowa Select Farms decided to resort to the gruesome tactic of ventilation shutdown. Barns were sealed off and steam was pumped in order to kill the pigs over many hours via hyperthermia and suffocation. And many pigs were still alive after the steam cleared and had to be killed via a captive bolt gun. Many were still alive when the bulldozers came to take them away. And how did this happen? This is horrifying. Lucas Walker was the Iowa Select Farms whistleblower. He's a truck driver for Iowa Select Farms, and his wife worked in the sow barn. He provided details about the first attempts at using this practice. Many of these experiments failed to kill the pigs after many hours. Several attempts were made at killing pigs using VSD before it even became successful. The first attempt, they could not succeed in heating the building past 120 degrees. After 4 to 5 hours, none of the animals had died. Then they finally decided to add in steam. And footage from The Intercept and Direct Action Everywhere shows this taking place on May 19th, 2020. And just for some timeline, Trump signed the Defense Production Act on April 28th, demanding that the plants be kept open. And Walker reported a massive increase in pig production over 2019. That was his big concern. The space for pigs was becoming increasingly smaller, and pigs appeared to be housed double what was permitted by normal standards. Before even reaching out to activists, he reached out to the Department of Natural Resources with no luck. And that is no surprise because the Department of Natural Resources, which inspects hog farms for compliance, and the director was appointed by Governor Kim Reynolds. And the director was Kayla Lyon, who is a former dairy industry official and agribusiness lobbyist. Lyon, in her previous capacity, had worked to pass the 2012 Ag-Gag law that criminalized recording at farm facilities. And Lyon lobbied at a time when Iowa Select's lobbyists in Des Moines pushed for the bill. After VSC footage came out, Iowa quickly passed another Ag-Gag law in record time. For committing food operation trespass, you could land up to 2 years incarceration, $6,250 fine. For the second offense, it would be a felony and 5 years incarceration and a $7,500 fine. And this was supported by the Iowa pork producers and sponsored by factory farm owner Ken Rosenboom, who activists had captured footage of the conditions inside his facility as well. And then a fourth Ag-Gag law was passed in April. And under this bill, knowingly entering private property without the owner's consent and taking soil and water samples or samples of an animal's bodily fluids or other animal products would become an aggravated misdemeanor on the first offense. That crime carries a sentence of up to 2 years in prison, and a second offense would be a Class D felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So these Ag-Gag laws create a lack of transparency in our food system, and consumers are not able to see where these animals are raised and the conditions that they live in. And through a public records request, it was shown just how close the ties are between the governor of Iowa and the pork industry. The 186-page list shows major support from pork leaders. The largest individual donors were Jeff and Deb Hansen of Iowa Select Farms, giving $50,000 in September. But the total they had given was nearly $300,000. Christensen Farms board member Mary Ann Christensen was found to have made a $25,000 donation to Kim Reynolds' campaign on the December 29th, and they received $1.86 million through the Iowa Disposal Assistance Program. And if you want to know why we aren't meeting the goals of One Health, it's because these economic interests are taking priority. Susan Lieberman, the vice president of the Wildlife Conservation Society, who is a leader in the One Health movement, is quoted as saying, "The impediments to One Health in the past and moving forward are entrenched economic interests." And Gary Lynch, who owns Lynch Livestock in Waukoma, made a winning bid in Kim Reynolds' charity auction for an afternoon over time. That winning bid was $4,250. Lynch has donated more than $100,000 to Reynolds' campaign since 2016. After he won, the governor was a keynote speaker at Lynch's annual charity banquet in Decorah. And Reynolds also made an appearance in a cooking video for Iowa Select employees last summer. She spoke at a ribbon cutting for a new warehouse, and her staff flew the company's flags over the Iowa Capitol. Jennifer Krall, Iowa Select's Director of Public Affairs, wrote to the governor's office about a video Reynolds recorded for the charity, saying, "It's amazing. She hit on so many talking points in a short period of time." And Krall supplied the governor's office with talking points that included, "What a great example of Iowa farmers giving back." Meanwhile, Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement is a group that has been opposing Iowa Select's expansion because of environmental concerns, and they have been unable to get a meeting with Reynolds for years. But the animal ag industry doesn't just influence our political leaders, they also influence the veterinary profession. And the organization that should be protecting these animals also is lending legitimacy to these types of practices. So once the story about ventilation shutdown hit the media, Iowa Select Farms Communications Director Jen Sorensen, who this year was recently elected president of the National Pork Producers Council, was able to say, veterinarians and production well-being professionals are overseeing the process to ensure accordance with the American Association of Swine Veterinarians and the American Veterinary Medical Association. They could claim that they were using veterinary-approved methods and cited the AVMA depopulation guidelines for the procedure. But many veterinarians are appalled by this and do not want our profession to be used to lend legitimacy to this practice. Ventilation shutdown should only be used in constrained circumstances per the guidelines, and this was not one of those. ISF had weeks to retrofit their barns and decrease stocking densities. There are 9 other methods of depopulation that could have been used, and they chose it because it was the cheapest method. So 1,500 veterinarians have signed on to Veterinarians Against Ventilation Shutdown. And despite the fact that I've been a paying member of the AVMA since I graduated vet school in 2012, they have not responded to my calls or emails at all, or any of our calls or emails about this issue. In fact, and they were supposed to talk about this issue in January, but because it was a late submission, it was the first time in history the AVMA House of Delegates refused to hear a late submission. And I recently talked to the former chief veterinarian of the Food Safety and Inspection Service, Dr. Pat Basu, who is quoted as saying in the New York Times, "When it comes to power, no one dares stand up to the pork industry, not even the US government." And this is where we stand. This is why we are at the situation where we're at right now. When normal channels of addressing injustices fail, activists have to take action and draw attention to these injustices. Throughout history, activists have broken the law and committed acts of civil disobedience to work to change harmful systems and institutions. And so now we get to talk to Linda Cridge, who has confronted the industry head on. And this system is causing harm to our planet, humans, other species, and people are dying. We have to act with the sense of urgency that the situation deserves. The next pandemic will be upon us, and then where will we be? We need to build the future of our food system that is more just and equitable, and doesn't hurt anyone and our planet and animals. And it's up to us who are in a position of privilege and power to challenge these systems head on. And I think veterinarians play an important role in that. So the industry has also done a great job at vilifying animal rights activists and making them seem like really scary, frightening people, and also calling normal people like me terrorists, who I am far from one. So thank you, Linda. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to kind of start at the beginning with you. Growing up, when you were a kid, did your family have animals?
We did. We had dogs, and my father was a big bird lover, so we had some bald-headed roller pigeons, and we didn't have any cats, but we did have dogs and birds.
Yeah. And oops, can you all see okay? Cool. And you said your dad was a hunter?
My dad was a hunter, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I grew up eating everything, eating squirrel and rabbit, quail, pheasant, turkey, duck. Yeah, you name it. Salmon, he was a hunter or a fisherman. He went to Canada for 2 weeks every year, and that's what I grew up thinking that we were supposed to do, to eat animals. I thought that seemed pretty normal.
How do you go from that to becoming an animal rights activist?
Well, in 2011, I accidentally got the book Skinny Bitch from the library.
What is that book? What does it say?
What does it say?
Yeah.
Well, It's kind of, I think, what they call a backdoor vegan book, and it presents as a maybe as a diet book. It was just on audio, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I used to take my laptop around, had a disc, and I would take it around the house with me and listen to various audiobooks. And that happened to be a new audio book at the library. So I got it. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I listened to it, and I was very surprised at what I heard. They talk a lot about, they start talking about diet, but then they bring in Gail Eisner's discussion of what happens in a slaughterhouse, a slaughterhouse worker talking about it. So I shared it with my husband, who said, well, maybe I don't want to be a skinny bitch. But he read it too, or he listened to it also, and we decided that we needed to make some changes in our family. So that was pretty much it.
That's great. And feel free, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. So have you ever been around any farm animals and pigs? Have you ever rescued a pig before?
Okay, well, my daughter has rescued a pig. When she was a sophomore in high school, the FFA, Future Farmers of America, they brought what they kind of call a petting zoo, I guess, to the high school. And they just had this pig there that said free to a good home. And the pig had autism, according to the person giving him away. And Marina didn't know anything about having a pig, and so she wasn't really a good home, but they wanted to get rid of the pig. So she rescued Kip, and we found a home for him and took him up to Wisconsin, where I met a lovely lady named TJ Dirks, who rescues pigs. And that was, the start of a really nice friendship with her.
That's
and
awesome.
I got to know a little more about pigs at that time.
And tell the story about the pig interacting with the farmer.
Yeah, so TJ has told me, first of all, Kip is his name. He's named after Kip Anderson. And one thing about Kip is he had a little dog friend that TJ would walk around on a leash, but Kip decided that he was going to pick up the leash on his own and start walking the dog, because pigs are so smart. But the story that you're talking about is just, she would have Kip out in the yard, and there was a farmer, just somebody who was retired, and he raised a few pigs of his own for slaughter. And he came by to meet Kip one day, or just to talk to TJ, kind of what's going on here with this pig. You don't really see pet pigs too much in Wisconsin. And while he was there, Kip kept tugging at his pant leg. And the guy was like, what is he doing? And she said, well, he wants you to pet him. And so that was, again, the start of a beautiful friendship. He said he never knew that pigs could be like that. And of course, why would he know that? Because they were never given an opportunity to express who they are. Mm-hmm. So he has since stopped farming, and he comes over often, and he brings hay and all whatever TJ needs. He feels it's very clear, she says, that he feels guilty about what he has done in his life with pigs, and he loves Kip. Yeah. So it's really nice.
So how did you get involved in like acts of civil disobedience? Can you describe the preparation that activists go through before committing acts of civil disobedience, and any advice that you would have for people who are considering challenging the law?
Okay. Well, I've been doing little protests ever since I became vegan back in 2011. But I was always very interested in direct action everywhere. And finally, in 2019, I got to come to the Animal Liberation Conference. And while I was there, part of that training was just to know your rights. And if you're willing to be arrested, if you're considering being arrested, they have a whole program, a whole protocol, so that you understand exactly what to expect and what to say and how to handle it. And, you know, we were handcuffed, and it was very elaborate. And they didn't want anybody doing it. They didn't want anybody going into it without their eyes wide open. And the one thing, the overarching thing that I noticed was that what they would say is, if the police are going to try to break up a group, the first person that they're going to target is a minority, whether that be, you know, a person of color or maybe a trans person. And those people would also be more at risk for just being hurt, and what their ultimate outcome might be. So I knew that I had a lot of privilege, and that wasn't a concern of mine. So I decided to get arrested at the agency.
Yeah, I participated in the civil disobedience training as well, which was really interesting. It was more like trying to convince activists not to get arrested. Like, please do not do this. Like, think about all of the things you have to take care of. And there's like so many really young 20-year-olds who are, you're like, please don't mess up your life. Don't get arrested. It's going to be really challenging for you. If they want to do it anyway, fine. But like, there's a lot of convincing people not to do it, because you're not in the right part of your life.
The young lady that I brought with me, she was 19 at the time, and she wanted to get arrested. She kept talking about what will happen if I have to fly back to California, and she had so many questions, but she still wanted to do it. And I said, no, you're not doing it. Your mother will kill me. I'm not allowing that. Like, she was my responsibility. So I didn't let her do it, but a lot of people wanted to.
Yeah, I could see myself in like my 20s, like wanting to do it. And that would have completely ruined my opportunities to go to vet school. Now I'm in a position of even more power and privilege to create more change than I would have been by just getting arrested as a 20-year-old. So,
well, I'm sorry. Did you want?
So yeah, I just saying, it's not something for everybody, and definitely those people who are in a position of privilege should take it on. We have a duty to, but it's not something just anybody should do.
No.
Sure. No. So how do you overcome fear of the moment of an action like what you're participating in?
Just like the civil disobedience?
Yeah.
I don't think I think that the atmosphere in the 2 times that I've been arrested, I don't know that I ever really felt any fear. I felt a lot of pretty much calm, that we are doing something good and something necessary. And yeah, I guess there was a part of me that thought maybe they'd put the handcuffs on and then walk us around the corner and take the handcuffs off. And there was a time where I realized, no, I'm going to jail. And maybe just a little bit. But at that point, then the fear didn't matter because the handcuffs were already on me. So how do I overcome it? I don't know. You just do.
Yeah. And what charges are you facing in Iowa? Did we?
Okay, so
back to the beginning.
A felony, burglary, and eavesdropping, and wiretapping. That's just one charge, which is a serious misdemeanor. So it's mainly the felony that is a concern, obviously.
And can you tell me about Jilly, the pig?
Okay, she's a pig who was rescued. And the best thing I can tell you about her is that she's still alive. She has passed her first birthday, which obviously most pigs don't get to do. And she's happy, safe, and free. And that feels really good. What I can tell you about her is that she had an infection on her face, and that's pretty much what saved her life. So yeah, it's a farmer's paradox. So the sick ones sometimes are the ones who end up getting to live. and that's what happened with her. But for those who don't know who Gilly is, she is the pig that was rescued during the whole ventilation shutdown investigation, and she's at a sanctuary now. And Lucas Walker's wife was the one who picked that name.
Oh, tell me about Lucas Walker. Who is he and what was he like?
So Lucas is the whistleblower from ISF. He is a young truck driver, very articulate, intelligent man. Again, married. His wife works in the sow barn. She was not very happy about what he was doing, but so he's a truck driver, and he was noticing that ISF was not following their own guidelines and what he called double stocking. You know, the pigs, they put them in at a certain weight, and then the bigger they grow, then the less room there is. And he noticed that they were putting twice as many in there. And you can imagine the guidelines aren't that great to begin with. So if they're not even following them, then that's especially bad. So when he reported it, it kind of fell on deaf ears. And he hooked up with Matt because he saw Matt's investigation of Rosenboom on Senator Rosenboom's farm.
Just for people who don't know, who is Matt?
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt Johnson. He's the press coordinator and all-around hero from Direct Action Everywhere. He was the person really leading this whole investigation. He's from Iowa originally, and he is the one who went to Senator Rosenboom's farm. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline was there, but Lucas saw it and reached out to him. And that was it. So Lucas, that took a little bit of finessing, as you might imagine somebody who is a truck driver in Iowa isn't completely certain he wants to do what he's doing, especially on record. So
how do you think he feels about it now that he did it?
Well, I don't think he regrets it. He's not working for ISF anymore. I have not spoken to him, but yeah, I think he's got a good head on his shoulders and a good moral compass. And I think that ultimately that's why he reached out in the first place. So yeah, I feel fairly certain that he feels good about it.
Yeah. It's hard. I can't imagine, like, your wife works there, you work for the company, and you're going to upend everything to do this, to reach out to this group who, like, when you go to work at ISF, you have to say that you're not affiliated with any animal rights organization or anything. They take that sort of thing very seriously. They don't allow anybody to bring in any recording equipment or anything like that. So I can't imagine. And they're just, yeah, it's such a hard thing to overcome. What were your interactions with the Iowa police like?
Well, first, we tried to go through the correct channels and report that this was happening. And what I noticed was that the police didn't really seem too concerned about what was actually being reported. It really sounded like they were seeking to gather information for Iowa Select Farms. They wanted to know how was the footage obtained? How would they know that it was legitimate? You know, like, were there any markings? And just the questions were not the kinds of questions that you would think a police officer would really be asking. And then a little bit later, Matt Johnson and I were pulled over when we were in the vicinity of the farm where the ventilation shutdown took place. And the Grundy County Sheriff, he knew all about ventilation shutdown, which I thought was just kind of a weird thing for a sheriff to know about. And he knew that it had been deemed humane. He wanted to argue with us. And he was just a little too invested,
Sounds like he had all the talking points down.
Yeah. Yeah. He actually argued that well, he said it had been deemed humane, and I asked him if he would put his dog to, if he would kill his dog that way. He actually said that if a vet told him that it was okay, that he would do it. And it was kind of a disingenuous conversation, really. But the other thing about him was he did everything he could to charge Matt and me with a crime. And he gave Matt a ticket for driving without a license, even though he wasn't actually driving. And they were just really reaching. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So some people think that animal rights activists are performing for social media just to get attention, that sometimes animal rights activists exaggerate. VSD is obviously an extreme circumstance that is not likely to happen again until the next pandemic or infectious disease outbreak. So why does VSD matter so much? What do you think about the idea that animal rights activists exaggerate on social media?
Well, first of all, there are all kinds of animal rights activists, so they're not necessarily monolithic. I won't disagree that on occasion they do some over the top things, but drastic times call for drastic measures. You have to get people's attention, and it's nearly impossible to get anyone's attention. It's nearly impossible to get any press, to get any of these things covered. So if they're a little performative on occasion, it's with good reason. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that. And the ends justify the means. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have to act with a sense of urgency that is demanded of the situation. And it is hard to get any media attention for sure. I'm like, just if you look at the normal factory farming practices, that they're pretty horrifying. But when you just point to them and show them on social media, the farmers just say that is standard industry practice, castrating pigs with no anesthesia, docking their tails with no anesthesia, putting moms in these gestation crates where they're not allowed to express their natural behaviors and move is horrifying enough as it is. And that's just standard. When you have something so out of the ordinary like VSD, does get attention. And this finally got the attention of veterinarians who aren't talking about these things enough when we should be in the practice of advocating for animals. We are ignoring these atrocities that are going on. So how do you feel about being called a hero for what you're doing, for taking these risks?
I'm not sure that anyone's called me a hero. I certainly don't feel that I'm a hero. I just saw an opportunity to help out in this situation, and I did it. You're more of a hero, honestly, Crystal. You've done a lot more than I have. So
I haven't risked arrest at all, and I feel like I haven't risked arrest or my freedom. Yeah. I'm not willing to do that.
The word hero just I don't think anyone's called me a hero, and with
No, they are, but I think what you and I are doing, we're in a position of privilege. Everybody who's in our position should be doing these things. Like, we should be speaking out. We should be dismantling these oppressive, abusive, exploitative systems. Because if we don't do it, who is going to do it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am not a public speaker or anything. I don't like attention at all. But I'm like, if I don't talk about these things, nobody else is going to. I'm not going to be able to inspire other veterinarians to talk about this. So we have to start with one person who's talking about these things, and eventually more and more people will join us, hopefully. But that's all we can do. Any other questions from the audience? I see Andrew Gotti. I saw somebody got arrested recently. His wife just got arrested 6 hours ago for doing an open rescue of 3 chickens from a farm in Northern Ireland. Wow, that's astonishing. We should describe what open rescue is for people who are not familiar. Do you want to describe it, Linda?
Well, open rescue is just when an activist believes that an animal has been without food or water, is just in general not being cared for, and removes the animal from the farm and takes them to a vet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and usually to save their life. And it's just a necessary measure. And in California, 597E is a law that arguably makes it not a crime. I'm not sure that has actually been successfully challenged yet. I think that's the idea.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's just the idea that you torture one animal in your backyard as a regular person, you risk arrest. But you torture millions of animals as a $1 billion corporation, and that's just business. But if you uncover the cruelty and you bring it to the public's attention and you save someone from suffering and death and take them to the veterinarian, that gets you arrested. Makes no sense at all.
Right.
Kirsten's wondering, I'm wondering what the public reaction has been locally in the town around ISF. Do they support the activists or the company, or is it mixed? I wonder, like, how many people support the company?
For the ventilation shutdown?
Well, I mean, like, just support ISF. What do they think about? Do people know about ventilation shutdown? Has it reached a wide enough media attention that people are aware of this thing?
I still really think that Iowa Select Farms has done a really good job of PR in keeping it very, very quiet and very hush hush. No one even knew that it was happening. And
yeah,
I'm not sure I could. I know that when Matt and I went to talk to some of the workers right as it was happening, as they were shoveling the dead pigs in the, with those backhoes or excavators, they agreed right then and there that this is a horrible situation. They didn't want to be doing it. No, none of those people wanted to be doing it. And they all hung their head in shame. The very few people that even were privy to the fact that it was happening, but it was very, very quiet. So I'm not sure that they all really know. And I think since they decided to stop doing it, surprisingly, after the article came out, after it was kind of exposed just how horrible it was, I think that a lot of the employees think that they did it altruistically. And so, yeah, I do think that they support their company. Yeah. I think it'd be kind of cognitive dissonance to work there and not support the company. They almost have to believe in them. So.
Yeah, it's just astonishing. I want to like just go back to the veterinary industry. Like, if you look at, I was looking at the class photos of Iowa State Veterinary School. They don't keep any demographic data at all, but it is the class pictures look entirely white, and they are just upholding these oppressive systems that many of the workers in these meat processing plants are Black, Indigenous people of color. These factory farms are placed in communities, strategically communities that are people of color, because they don't have the power to fight back and talk to the government and demand that these places aren't built in their communities. And we really, as the veterinary profession, these are the types of racial justice issues that we have to address. Since many of us in the veterinary profession are white, we have to stand up for people, these white supremacist systems that are in place, that are hurting people and killing people on a regular basis. So I hope veterinarians start to see what a huge issue this is and stand up to these oppressive systems. Any other final thoughts that you have?
No, just I really appreciate your all of the work that you put into this in your presentation.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable, Crystal, and thank you for the petition and just shedding light on this and sharing it with all your veterinarian friends.
Thank you guys. And let me see if I can share my screen, because you all are probably wondering, what do you do? How can people help you? Is there anything personally that you need from us for help, or
anything that I need?
Anything that you need or would like us to do to help? But I have some things people can do if you don't have any.
I don't have anything at the moment.
Present. I would recommend people sign on to Veterinarians Against Ventilation Shutdown.org, VAVSD.org. If you are a veterinarian, contact your AVMA delegate and talk about these issues, the issues in our food system, how to build a better, more just food system, work together to combat these corporations who are wielding undue influence over our systems. You can support the activists by signing on to another letter that's different than VAVSD. It's more directed to supporting those who've committed acts of civil disobedience to raise awareness about this. ouronor.org/VSD. If you're interested in more of these issues and want to hear more on a regular basis, what these issues are and talk about them with other veterinarians, join us at ouronor.org. We have a Slack channel where we talk about these things on a regular basis, and we will have regular meetings as well. Any final questions from anyone else? If not, I will let you guys go. Roberto says, thank you, Linda, for your courage and compassion. Have you contacted the Animal Legal Defense Fund? Do you know if they support those facing charges like yours? DXC is kind of its own separate animal.
Yeah, Direct Action Everywhere is taking care of me. And yeah, let me follow up. I do want everyone to follow Direct Action Everywhere, DXC. Oh, yeah, and share their videos. That's what you can do. And if you want to learn more about ventilation shutdown, specifically, the article is at dxc.io/VSD. And so read that, share that, raise awareness with that.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.